People want to be loved. They want to be appreciated. They want to feel value. And how does that happen is when you're present, that quality time that we were talking about earlier. Are you actively listening, or are you distracted? Where's the common ground in activities that you share? And are you engaging in that, or are you just off kind of doing your thing? Or are you not making the time for it to begin with?
Hello, and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Alday Townsend, your host. This podcast is for individuals that are wanting to grow personally and professionally. The podcast is going to offer mindset shifts, personal experiences from myself and guest. We're also going to provide some great resources, tools, and direction for navigating life. The goal is to inspire you and encourage you to take ownership of your life and begin living it completely fully today. Let's get to stroking it. Hello and welcome. I'm Alday Townsend, your host. Today I have Craig Cooke. He is going to be sharing his business wisdom, experience, and expertise in three key areas: executive leadership, brand development, and marketing communications. We're going to be talking about how to take care of ourselves with self-care, friends and family and employees, and we're going to be diving into amazing tips and tools. Craig has a book out as well, so you're going to want to tune into this podcast. Craig, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Jenny, for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you so much.
So I know I gave them a little snapshot, a little bit about your professional experience, but before we get started, please tell us a little bit more about you. Where do you live? If you're married, do you have children? What season of life you're in? And maybe a snippet of what we can expect to learn from you today.
Okay, sure. So yes, Craig Cooke. I live in Southern California, beautiful place. It's really hard to beat the weather here, and lived here all my life, actually. I'm married, have two wonderful children as well, a couple dogs too. So kids 18 and one will soon be 15. So very busy with the teenage years. So, but it's all good. They're great kids, and very happy. Also, with what I do, I'm doing business consulting, and I'm transitioned to a whole new season in my life. I ran a company for 26 years. It's a company I started with just $1,300, and I grew it, sold it, and stayed on for a few years. Now I'm transitioned out in a new chapter of my life, and I do a lot of things that we'll probably talk about. So, but yeah, things are good.
I love that. I own my own company too. I own a music school. I started it 8 years ago. I'm in my 9th year of business, and I absolutely love it. Entrepreneurship, though, is super hard. There's a lot of struggles, highs and lows, but there's a lot of great payout as well, and super excited to dive more into that. So as we get started, I always love starting with the love languages. I feel like they're super, super important when it comes to relationships. If you haven't read the book, Gary Chapman spells this out for you. Not only is there a personal book, but I don't know if you know this, but there is a book for the workplace too that really breaks down the love languages, so you know how to take care of your employees, retain them, and also engage with them in a way that fits their needs so they feel appreciated, valued, and lots of other things. So your love language is quality time. Tell us a little bit more about what that means to you and when you were exposed to the love languages.
Sure. So quality time to me, I look at it, time is our most precious resource. It's finite. We only have so much time in our lives. We don't get any extra, right? Maybe if you're taking care of yourself, you may think you're getting extra, but hey, stuff happens. Who knows, right? So you only have so much time. So it's not about the quantity. It's really about the quality, and the quality of time how you spend your time yourself, and the passions that you have, and finding joy in the present moment, and then the people that you spend time with. And that has to be quality, not quantity, but quality.
So do you find that you were more in tune to what quality time meant after you sold your business or during your ownership of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think during my ownership of it is when I start to realize, wow, I need to focus on quality, because that quality was getting away from me. And because I sacrificed so much by being all in my business, just consumed by my business, that the quality of time spent with my various relationships suffered. And it's an easy thing to do for entrepreneurs. So yeah, I would say it was during my entrepreneurial journey I started to recognize that.
Yeah, it's super, super important, especially when you see things, from the outside view and you're like, oh, I could be doing this. And I think so many times, as you said, we get caught up running the business, the day-to-day operations, and we're spending so much time growing or on our people that we forget about the people that have our back, they're hanging out, that are maybe reaping some of the benefits of that company. But at the same time, they'd rather have you present and in person than maybe some of the other stuff that business is providing.
Yeah, that's a really important word you just said, being present. Because even if I was, say, with some friends or my family, was I really present at the moment? Did I have my company in my mind, or did I have my laptop out and I'm doing work while I'm spending time with them? Right? How present are you with them? And that goes to that aspect of quality.
Yeah, 100%. My husband's love language was quality time. I thought just being in the same room or on the same couch was quality time, or going out to dinner or going to an event was quality time. He's like, no, you're talking to all these other people. You're engaging with all these other people. It's not really focusing on you and I. And so that was a huge game changer in our relationship when I realized that we had two different descriptions or thought processes for the meaning of quality time.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah, makes sense.
So, all right. So I love that you're an entrepreneur. I love that you have a book out. Tell us about the book before we get started into the dialogue as far as Stroke It is concerned.
Sure. So the book, Business Kung Fu, is my first book. I just released it a few months ago. It's available on Amazon. And the concept behind it is I studied Chinese Kung Fu from age 17 to 25 really intensely. And I started my company at the age of 25. And I took a lot of the principles, lessons that I learned from studying Chinese Kung Fu and other aspects of martial arts, and really applied that to how I ran the company, how I structured it, how I thought about it, how I brought my discipline into it, perseverance, overall mindset. There's just so much that I brought into running the company. And that's what the book's about. It takes those lessons and places them into that context of the entrepreneurial journey. The whole purpose of the book is my intent is to inspire and empower other entrepreneurs on their journey to overcome challenges. And there's a lot in there. And it's exciting.
That is exciting. I'm going to have to get that book. Yeah, entrepreneurship is a journey. And sometimes I know that we're so focused on like the finished product or like hitting budget or like where we're going that we forget to embrace the journey and the day to day and like, oh, I'm making this impact, or oh, we've made this difference. And you forget to just focus on those little wins because you're so focused on the bigger picture or like, focused on the finish line essentially. So
Right. Yeah. There's one of my chapters that talks about winning and losing, and how to handle wins and handle losses. And there's another aspect I write in the first chapter where I talk about how important balance is. And I have a model called 5 Elements of Entrepreneurship, which is based on Chinese 5 element theory. And there's a lot in there. It's great stuff.
So, do you believe that it is possible to have balance? Because there's a lot of people will say there's no such thing as balance, and then there's a portion of people which I feel like I've found balance in everything, like in my work life balance, and there's a lot of people that say there isn't. But what is your take on balance when it comes to work and life and all of that?
Yeah, balance is possible. It's extremely difficult to achieve and maintain because life places so many demands on us. But and for me, I was completely out of balance with my company. I was so all in. I was in great shape from all the martial arts that I did in strength training at the age of 25. And then one of the big lessons by going out of balance was my health suffered. 10 years later, I was completely on the other side of the spectrum. And then fast forward another 5-7 years after that, I even found myself, because of a lack of physical health, that my mental and emotional states were being affected as well, in addition to all the continuous pressures of meeting the demands of clients, managing employees, dealing with vendors, juggling family life, that I found myself off-centered, just out of balance and off-centered. And I really had to get on a track of health to get back into balance. And one of the big things for me was when I came across Qigong, which we may talk about later. But that was all about getting back to center and becoming balanced. So it's possible, but it takes work, and you have to be very um, determined about it. But it's possible. I believe so.
So I find it really interesting talking about the personal health element to being so tied up into your business. And I think that is common for a lot of business owners as well. They ignore their health, they ignore the warning signs. And then that's when a lot of them end up having heart attacks, or they're just unstable, or they're just maybe lacking happiness and sink in depression and things like that. So let's get straight into taking care of yourself. And I just went to my first Qigong class. Is that the one with the
Oh,
ball
you
and the
did?
energy? So
Oh, awesome!
actually,
Fantastic.
one of my manager that runs my music studio, was my birthday, and she's like, let's go to this class. And I had never done it before, and I absolutely loved it. It was like your tiger and your communication. And so let's tell all the listeners more about your story, but how important taking care of your health is, and the mindset and that spiritual element was to, you becoming you.
Okay, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there. So I'll start with the self care. As I mentioned, how my health was deteriorating, and actually, right around age 45 or so, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and that was a big kick in the butt. And for a few years prior, I just started trying to get my health back on track, and I was slowly doing things. And like the year before is when I came across the medical Qigong, and that was a big game changer for me. Like I said, it got me back to center and balance. But then when I was diagnosed with diabetes, I was like, wow, I really need to get my health back in track. So I really started taking that seriously, and I reversed it 100% naturally without any pharma meds. Yeah, but it's a lot of work.
That's amazing, but there's so many things that you can naturally do, and a lot of it has to do with your mindset and being centered. Your mind is so powerful, and especially when you're holding in stress and emotions, you can have pain, you can end up with shingles. There's all these different things. So tell us a little bit how you started taking ownership of your time so that you could go and take care of your body and your mind.
So for me, because my day was so incredibly hectic, at the time, our company was going through a rapid growth spurt. We were on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing private companies in the country. And we were on it 5 years in a row. So this is probably like year 3 or 4 that we were on that list. And there was just a lot of immense stress and pressure. And I said, wow, I got to beat this. And the only way I was able to make that a priority was I got to wake up earlier. So I started waking up at like 4:20, going to the gym at 5 o'clock, and doing what I needed to do there. And because I usually would start my business day around 7 a.m. or so. And then by the time when that starts, it's just crazy because everyone's like, hounding you for stuff. Um, so it's super important. In order for me, my best method was to get up early before the family was up, before the phone, text, emails, and all that I was paying attention to, so I could do that self-care. And I do that today. Today, I wake up at 5 normally, and I do like about an hour and a half of Qigong practice, which is about 45 minutes of various exercises, and then about another 45 minutes of meditation. And then I get on with my day. But allocating that time is super important.
So when you say you're doing this, 90 minutes, that's going to be really overwhelming for some people that haven't got to this mindset yet, or haven't got to the place where they have no choice but to focus on themselves and their health. So I think that's really overwhelming for some people, which is amazing that you're able to do that. I'm able to do that too. So when you say that you're doing this 90 minutes, is some of this like with a group class where you have accountability partners? Are you watching YouTube channels? Is this stuff that you're just doing on your own now? Like how did you get to 90 minutes too? Like did it just start at 30 and then it went to 90?
Yeah. These are all things that I do on my own because there's a whole lot that I know. I've been studying it for 9 years, and I'm actually enrolled in a doctorate program for Chinese energy medicine. So I could actually train all day if I
Okay.
had the time. I really could, with all the
Okay.
different things there is to do. But obviously, that's not realistic. But in learning, when I first got into Qigong, there was just a couple things that I did which were pretty simple. And one exercise takes like 20 minutes, and then you couple it with meditation. And if you get in 20 minutes of meditation, awesome. Sometimes what I would do, and especially when I was trying to get my business sold, I really am big about manifestation, and I utilize meditation to help manifest. And I would just make sure I woke up 20 minutes extra, and I did 20 minutes of meditation for that purpose. And I would say if someone is having challenge for time, making time, allocate 20 minutes, whether it's stretching, yoga, meditation, Qigong, or whatever, just start with 20 minutes. Get up 20 minutes earlier. Everyone can do that.
Yeah. Well, I think there are believers of that for sure. And there's going to be people who are like, oh, I just can't do it. So I guess, would you encourage them to go to bed earlier? What if they don't understand the manifestation and the meditation, and like, they're just like thinking, I want that 20 minutes of sleep. What's the benefit, the wow factor? How do we get them up 20 minutes earlier?
Well, I would say if they could make meditation a priority and they get up 20 minutes earlier, they don't need to go to bed 20 minutes earlier, because the meditation will make up for that sleep time. It actually will have a compounding effect where, everyone's different, but let's say it would be like if they got an hour of sleep, by meditating 20 minutes. That's just how beneficial meditation is. You need less sleep when you're meditating on a regular basis.
I think that's super powerful. Thanks for sharing that. So talk to us about other things that you're doing for yourself that fuel positivity, that make you healthier, and that make you the person that you are today, to where you have the energy to give to people and you're healthy. Like, what are some other things that our listeners could do?
Right. So with me, especially with the condition I had, that was a battle I had to fight on all fronts, like land, air, and sea. So it encompasses a lot of stuff. We already talked about Qigong, the strength training. I do that a couple days a week. I also got back into martial arts as well. I do that at least once a week, sometimes 3 times a week. Also, I'm very conscious about my diet, as far as diet as on not like, hey, a special diet, just on a daily, long-term basis. It's a lifestyle change. I eat different than I did, 10 years ago. Also supplementation, also hydration, water, and sleep, proper sleep, and walking steps. Especially for me with that, just walking outside in nature is really powerful. That's kind of meditative in and of itself. It can help a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. My husband and I, part of our quality time is to go for a walk every morning together. And we find just waking up, you're usually in a good mood, versus like the end of the day when you just had all these obstacles or challenges or people that drove you crazy. And getting out and listening to the birds and just seeing just the landscape can be so, I don't know, invigorating and positive, and it's really, really beneficial, like for your mind, body, and soul, and if you have a relationship with someone else. So I'm all about the steps and being outdoors. I always say nature, not news.
Yes. Because that's the whole other opposite effect that you want when you're watching news and getting all worked up, right?
Exactly. So, and to our listeners too, if you're tuning in, meditation can be really challenging. I know, like when I'm a type A personality, and at first I was like, there's no way I can sit there for this long. And I started with guided meditations on YouTube, and I did 5 minutes, then I did 10 minutes, then I did 15, and then I did 20. And it took a little while, but once I started to see the benefits and I started setting an intention, I started breathing, I was able to use a lot of those tools throughout the day when I got really stressed or I had anxiety. And then I was able to encourage my team members to do the same thing, which my team members are now using those tactics on some of the students, and like they're really, really helping them. So meditation is so important, and it doesn't matter your personality. Everybody can do it. I truly believe that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'll say, would commend you for building up the practice, and I think that is a fantastic way to start. Especially that, everyone has this monkey mind that makes it hard. Like, oh, I just have too many thoughts. Well, everyone does actually. And starting with a guided meditation is really helpful, just to and with a small amount of time. So that's a great way to get going. Also, what I like about Qigong is that's like static meditation. I call it, when you're just sitting there, like everyone's familiar with, and you can, which Qigong does have. But there's also movement, where we can refer to it as dynamic meditation, because there's movement involved. It looks kind of like Tai Chi, and you just experience Qigong. So when you have this movement and you're integrating the mind, body, and breath, you're getting into a meditative state as well. But it's a little different, and you're really engaging your entire body. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, it's your physical body, your energy body, and your spirit body, which is like your thoughts and emotions. So you're really engaging your whole being. And that's a great way to kind of get used to going into things. And then you can then start doing the static meditation. So that's another approach too.
Right. And with the programs that you're talking about too, it's really great for your cognitive functions, for your brain. And, I think that's why a lot of people think, oh, it's just for older people. But I really think that younger people can benefit from these practices as well. So I'm really grateful that you're really sharing this and shedding some light on it, because I think some of us tend to step back or push away from that, because we're like, oh, it's for older people, or that's just voodoo, or it's kind of weird. And it's actually it's so needed. If more people did that, we would have more centered, grounded, happier, and healthier people, which wouldn't need so much of the prescription drugs, and we wouldn't have so many mental health issues, and the workplaces would be better. There wouldn't be as much divorce. There would be happier kids. I mean, just all in all, this is just a great practice. So I'm a huge believer in it. So.
That's cool. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Exactly what you said. Ditto. I echo that.
Right. So, all right. So I want to talk a little bit about friends and family, and how those close relationships are super, super important. And now that you have a little bit more time, you understand the basis of the quality. Let's talk to our listeners a little bit about, our friends and family, and how to keep them close, and how to make sure they feel loved and appreciated and just valued.
Yeah, well, that's it right there. Like, people want to be loved, they want to be appreciated, they want to feel value. And how does that happen is when you're present, that quality time that we were talking about earlier. Are you actively listening, or are you distracted? Where's the common ground and activities that you share? And are you engaging in that, or are you just off kind of doing your thing? Or are you not making the time for it to begin with? For me, I prefer having a few quality friend relationships. And of course, then I have my family. And that's just me. Everyone's different. Some people are really all about going out and having tons of friends and doing all kinds of stuff. Great if you can do that. But for me personally, I like to have a small group of close-knit friends. And when I'm able to spend the time, that it's quality time, whether it's even on the phone, FaceTime, Zoom, in person, but it's really being engaged in the interactions.
Got it. So for our listeners that are listening, that maybe are men that maybe recently sold their company, or maybe they're, in their 40s and 50s, and they're not really hanging out with high school or college friends. Is there a place that you would encourage them to go to meet like-minded individuals?
Yeah, I would say, well, whatever activities that they're interested in, passions that they have, hobbies, etc. I think that's a great place to start. I love taking care of myself, so I have friends that I hang out with that are in that Chinese energy medicine program, the doctorate program I'm in. I was just with some of them today. Actually, we kind of go outside and meet on a weekly basis to train, actually. And it's fun. It's just, we get together and we laugh and all that. Also, varies depending upon what you're doing and in the life stage. If you're kind of having a passion of still keeping busy with some work, like I belong to an executive peer group, and I also belong to a mastermind business group. And it's great quality people. I see them on occasion, and when I do see them, it's a great time. There's quality time that's spent with them. And then, I'd say it's pretty much there where I would focus.
Okay. And then talk to us a little bit about the benefits of having those communities and having those relationships with friends, removing yourself from isolation and having, whether it's conversations about business, it's conversations about family, but just having that community. Can you talk to us about the benefits of that and how it plays into your mental health and your happiness?
Yeah, it's big. I mean, I think we all felt it with the lockdown several years ago. Yeah, that was a tough time, right? And really, it was a big shift in priorities for a lot of people, and learning the value of our relationships with each other. And I think one of the big things, benefits, is the support that everyone needs from time to time. Life is interesting, and life will throw its curveballs at us. It likes to sucker punch us from time to time. And, we need that support team, whether it's family or friends, both, because life can throw some big challenges your way and you just never know when it's going to hit. And I think that's one of the greatest benefits outside of just being fulfilled by spending quality time with people.
With people. And you mentioned to listen, and we talked about that in various ways already, but do you have tools and tactics or things that are maybe in your book that would help us with our listening skills or the importance of listening, whether it's personal or professionally?
I do touch upon it briefly in my book, and it's really how I refer to really active listening, well, what does that mean? It really means paying attention and understanding where that other person's coming from. That empathy. The having empathy, and that's one thing I would tell my leaders in my company, because I really work to develop them as not only professionally but personally, and that was one of the big things I tell them is that work on empathy. Some of them have already naturally had it, but empathy is super important, because when you can demonstrate that true empathy, then the other person sees that you actually care about them. And that's what a lot of people really appreciate, because it's not like, oh, yeah, that person doesn't care about me, psh, whatever, But, especially when it's a supervisor or a manager, someone of authority that's over you, and they demonstrate that they care, that's big. And people will go the extra mile for you, and knowing that you care, because then they feel like they should care.
Yeah, 100%. I think and employees are the backbone or the heartbeat of a lot of the companies, and you want them to feel appreciated. You want them to feel like you care for them, because that's what's going to keep them long term. It's going to boost your retention as well. If they feel like you don't care for them or value them, they're going to go to another organization as well. So let's dive right into the employee segment of this and how important it is to developing team members personally and professionally.
Yeah, it's super important. That's the way I ran my company. It was a very heart-centered approach, and really caring about the development of the team. There was the professional aspects, but also the personal aspects. So from a professional standpoint, training them to be better leaders or process-oriented, creating systems, organized. There's all these various skills, and whether I showed them or they went to some seminar or workshop or conference, so they can, those are things that I always supported, and that's important. But on a personal level, we would always have a theme for every year, and that theme would help reinforce our brand culture. And just a quick note, we actually won top places to work and best places to work 4 years in a row.
Congratulations. That's a big deal. That is amazing. Kudos to you and to your team as well.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, honestly, we stopped applying because that was at right around the same time we were on the Inc. 5000 list. And it was just, we were just getting too busy, and anyway, I stopped applying. So maybe we would have got it even more. But yeah, we got 4 years in a row. And, a big thing about reinforcing that brand culture, and a lot of that had personal aspects to it. So, for example, one theme for the year was master your craft, which is actually listed on the cover of my book. And yeah, there's a professional aspect to it, but the way we talked about it was from a personal standpoint about really taking your skill sets to its highest level and how fulfilling that can be as an individual to be able to be a master of your craft. There's the great aspects of what that can produce from a work standpoint, but from a personal fulfillment point, when you're a master of your craft, it brings a lot to the individual. So that's like one example. There's like, all kinds of things. And I did actually teach my managers how to meditate as well, because that came up, and some of them actually started incorporating that into a routine, and they thanked me for it. It was a big deal for them. So there's a whole number of examples and things, but yeah, it's super important.
And we're going to definitely dive into those a little bit more. For my company, we pick a word every year for the company. And so we vote on the word, and then we do a whole focus wheel, and the benefits and the impact that this word is going to have for us as individuals, but as a company as a whole. So we've had quality, we've had growth. This year, our word is believe, and it's been really, really impactful. And then I also have all my team members pick a word personally, and I have them develop that focus wheel as well. So I love what you're speaking. We do a lot of that with my organization. I personally have noticed that my teachers see that I care for them other than just the bottom line of what they're doing for the company. It's like that long-term retention, that loyalty, like having the empathy. There's like, I genuinely care for each and every single one of them. And it's in my best interest to care for them and their personal mental health and their wellness. The better your employees are, the better your organization is going to be. If your employees aren't healthy, physically, emotionally, or mentally, your organization is going to suffer through culture, through mistakes, quality control, and all those things. So I love what you're speaking about. So I really want to dive into some more of the examples that you have. If we have some CEOs, leaders, or managers, and they're really wanting to help with the development of their team members, let's give us a couple examples professionally. Then we'll dive into the personal, but give us some more tips and tools, maybe out of your book, or some resources or ideas that we can really dive into in this coming year.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And that's great, by the way, what you said that you do. That's fantastic. That resonates with me so much. I find that it's critically important to really define a solid brand culture. If you define that brand culture where just a way of operating becomes natural, it's like riding a bike. You're not thinking about pedaling and balancing and all that. You just do it without thinking, and you go from point A to point B. So it's the same thing. You have a vision, you want to achieve that vision, and you want to get there with the least amount of friction as possible. And that's going to be achieved if you have everyone operating in a way that's natural, unified together as one mind towards that particular vision or mission, et cetera, right? So defining that brand culture specifically, we could get into some components of that, but that is critical to success, in my opinion.
I will tell you, some of my best hires were amazing because they believed in the mission and the vision of the company, like total buy-in. So let's dive in and talk about the importance of having that vision and sharing it with your team members.
Sure. So everyone that we hired during the first week of onboarding, I would always meet. They would have a meeting with me, and usually be about an hour, and I get to know them a little bit, get to know me a little bit. But then I would take them through our brand document, our brand strategy document, and I'd go through all what I would refer to as the verbal expression of the brand, which was what we stood for, articulated in a narrative format. And so we go through the purpose, our vision, our mission, our values, our personality, our characteristics, our market-facing messages, where it started to kind of weave all throughout. You'd find all these commonalities, our brand promise statement. And like what you said with the buy-in, the purpose statement was extremely important to really it was a digital marketing agency that I ran, right? So it wasn't about pushing pixels. there was a higher purpose to serve that had a societal benefit. And people really appreciated that. And they did have buy-in. And, when people have, and because some days are grinder, they just are for a variety of reasons, right? So, I would explain this is something for them to just keep in the back of their mind, especially on the tough days, that the work that you do actually matters. And this is why. And people really appreciated that. And then that's why we had the theme every year that would reinforce some aspect of our brand culture. And then every quarter, we would meet, all staff company meeting, and we'd go through a bunch of things and all the news and updates. But we'd allocate a little bit of time, usually towards the end, where we would reinforce that theme for the year, and which was reinforcing our brand culture. Just because you have new hires coming in and throughout the year, and it was important to have that continuous reinforcement to keep everyone aligned.
Yeah. And I think when you share the vision with individuals and they see your long-term plan, they're able to see future opportunities for themselves. And they can see how they can grow within the company, or they can grow with you. And then by meeting with them and you understanding their value and their buy-in, you can create those opportunities as well. So that also helps with retention, long-term employment. And really, that buy-in is so, so important to them to know that they're making a difference and understanding that value that they're adding to the customers. They're not just pushing paper, or they're not just placing digital ads. They're seeing that impact throughout the entire company and what it has on each individual that works in the company too.
Yeah, 100%. And then you said another really important key word, and that's the roadmap, like their roadmap of the future. And that was important. I remember back in the day, we lost a couple of really good people, and their reason that one of the reasons they stated, well, I really didn't understand my roadmap, what my future was, because at the time we just didn't have that really defined for that person well. Early stages of growing and kind of trying to figure things out, bad on us, right? So what you said is critically important. It's a lesson that we had to learn. Like, we really got to make sure we're taking a proactive approach to defining a roadmap for each individual that comes on board. That's our responsibility.
So I want to ask you too. For me, I didn't get into this mental state. I mean, I always had a vision, a mission. I always hired really well. But when I started doing the personal development for my team, it was after I had my own struggles and I went through a lot of different things and I started incorporating the meditation and I got mentally healthy. Then I was able to invest that time and try to help my team members along that. So when at one point did you understand this benefit to your employees? Was it from the very beginning, or was it after you went through your health crisis and then you started working with your team members on this?
I would say it was in stages. I was always very big on personal development. It was just that I got so consumed by my company and the business that I just kind of lost sight of myself, right? But I always had that. And one of my challenges was I was always very, very giving to others, but not really paying attention to myself. That was, one of my big lessons, right? So I think it came in stages where I really, started taking care of myself, and then getting into the Qigong practice and everything, where it like elevated to a whole new level. And I had a better understanding through experience. Like, take, for example, even though I really was into personal development, self-help books and all that stuff, but that's all like mental knowledge, right? And it takes you, part of the way, but it's not really until you experience that you gain understanding, which translates into wisdom that you can really share with others. And it just took, that experience for me to go through.
Right. And I think that they can see the transformation, which allows them to buy into more of it. I'm just thinking like some of the people that may be listening may be thinking, oh, I'm too in the weeds. I'm too in the business to be working on the business. And I mean, I can't focus on their mental health. I don't even have my own mental health and all that. So if there's somebody that's listening and that's their mindset, what is a tip that you would give them to encourage them to take ownership of their role within the organization so they can be better for their employees?
Well, that's important what you just said there, to take ownership. You have to acknowledge that you're accountable, that you're responsible and accountable. You alone are the one that's really going to activate your own growth. It's no one else's responsibility. It's yours. And you got to take ownership of that. Takes a while for some people to understand that, but that's one. Two, I would say seek a mentor. I was fortunate enough to have multiple mentors throughout my career in different aspects of the business, and then even my first Qigong teacher, he's a mentor in a very interesting way. So I think mentors can really help you be the bridge that helps you get to that other side when you have that struggle to get there.
100%. I have several mentors, and thank goodness for them, because they've been able to guide me through the struggle of entrepreneurship, the highs, the lows, the unknown as well. And they also have been super, super encouraging. And when other people may not in your life, you may need them to say, you can do it. Keep pushing forward. It's all going to be worth it, because there's a lot of days you want to quit and your family's sick of it. They're like sick of not seeing you. It's maybe not making as much money as you thought. And, everyone's waiting for you to fail. So these mentors are really, really crucial. So I have sourced mentors through SCORE, which is a national organization. It's retired CEOs. So everyone should have a SCORE in their area. The local chambers usually has mentors. SBDC, which is a small business organization as well. So get a mentor if you're listening to us and you're wanting some guidance, or contact one of us. We're happy to help and guide you. So I know we talked about the professional development, and you gave some really great tips and tools for business leaders as far as the professional. But if we want to focus on the personal aspect of our employees, can you give us one or two tips that we can start implementing that would help boost the morale and the culture and our team members?
Right. So everything starts with the self. You got to be right with yourself first. Again, those positive interactions with others. So one, you got to make sure that you're good. You're good, right? And then two is making sure that your team feels like they belong. I mean, really, people want to feel like they belong and that they're appreciated and that they're valued. So if you can demonstrate that through your interactions, and also get the team to support each other and demonstrate that to each other as well, because it really shouldn't just be all on you. You should really get everyone in unified to have that brand culture, right? So one thing that we would do in that spirit would every week we would have like just a quick, especially when we went into all remote mode. But we were doing it previously, but we made it even a little more fun when we were remote, where each week we'd have a quick update meeting, and we would start the meeting with like appreciation and recognition. So every week, team members would submit like, hey, I'd like to thank so and so for stepping up and helping me with this, blah blah blah. And then our executive assistant would compile all that, and then she would make a presentation out of that and make it like super fun. Like she would grab everyone's pictures and do all these like custom graphics, and just made it like super fun and funny. And it would last about maybe 10 minutes or so. And sometimes there would only be a few. Sometimes there would be like a dozen. And it's all people commending each other, thanking each other, saying, hey, I appreciate, so-and-so for X. And that went a long way, because it wasn't just myself or other leadership doing it. Of course, we would participate and do that too. But having team members do that for each other, it really created this feeling of like a much more family environment. And we were a small company, so maybe easier to do. I think at our peak, we had about 47 people, which for our type of company was decent size. But it definitely fosters a collaborative team spirit.
100%. I want to piggyback on that as well, what you just mentioned. I do a lot of development with my team members. And so I did an exercise of what do you bring to the table? Like talking about self-worth and their value. And, some of my team members could write down like 5, 10 things, no problem. But I had some team members that couldn't write anything down. They couldn't think of anything. And so instead of asking them more questions, we went around the table and everyone shared something that they valued about that person, or they admired, or they appreciated. And these people ended up with more things than the people that wrote a bunch of stuff down. But it was so empowering and it was so eye-opening. And some of them were like, I didn't even know that you noticed that I did that. I didn't know that you valued that. And what ended up happening is those individuals wanted to do all those things even more because they saw how much everyone appreciated it as well. So it was a really great way for boosting our culture and connecting our team. One other thing that we do, we just did it this past February for love, is that when everyone entered our staff meeting, we had them take a piece of paper, which we had all different colors, and we had them write like words of affirmation, a kind thought, something they admired, and we crumbled them up and we put them in a bucket. And before everyone left, they pulled one of those notes out and they read it. And it was so amazing because people pulled something they really needed to hear. And it was really just an amazing thing that we did. So we'll probably be doing that a little bit more often, not just during February, during the month of love. So there's if you are listening, these are all really great things to implement into like meetings that you're already having to boost the culture, to boost people's appreciation. Sometimes we're so busy running the company that we forget to take time to admire, to appreciate, or just to say, hey, thank you, or I appreciate you, or I value you. I do that a lot in our Slack channels. But some of my employees, their love language is words of affirmation. They need me to say that. They need me to say that face to face as well. So super important. So I feel like you and I could talk so much. So before we wrap up, because I know we're going to wrap up soon, is there anything else that you would like to add, or maybe like a framework or an element from your book that would be super powerful or useful for one of our team members or someone that's listening today?
Absolutely. So actually, right in the first chapter, which people could learn about this and download it for free on my website, actually, the first chapter, that is. I have a model called the 5 Elements of Entrepreneurship. And it is based on classic Chinese 5-element theory. So just to briefly state what that is, 5-element theory permeates throughout Chinese culture in martial arts, in medical systems, in spiritual systems, even music, food. It's just part of the culture. And it's all about balancing the 5 elements that are incorporated into everything, even within ourselves as individuals and in nature and so forth. Those 5 elements are fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And so I took that theory and through, based on my experience as an entrepreneur in my journey, my personal journey, and what I observed of others, I defined 5 elements that are critical for entrepreneurial success. And that is passion. Okay. It starts passion, which passion leads to discipline. So it's a cycle. There's a generative cycle, but then also a destructive cycle. We'll get to that in a second. But passion leads to discipline. Discipline leads to expertise. Expertise leads to confidence. And then confidence leads to faith. So it's a generative cycle where each element helps the subsequent potential and capacity of that element. And then once you develop these elements, it's important for these elements to be in balance, because if you have too much of one element, it can actually have an adverse effect on another element. So there's that generative cycle or creative cycle, but then the destructive cycle where it can go back the other way and diminish. So for example, if you start to lose your faith, you can then start to lose your confidence, which then affects your actual expertise, and which affects your discipline and so forth. It's a downward spiral instead of an upward spiral, right? And then if an element is out of balance, what does that mean? It's like it could be an excess condition of a particular element or a deficient condition. So let's take, for example, confidence. If there's an excess condition of confidence, what does that look like? It's arrogance, right? When someone is just so full of themselves and they have this massive ego and they just think they're all that, right? Well, that can have an adverse effect on discipline because it's all these cross relationships. Why? Because the attitude that forms, like, yeah, I'm so good. I don't really need to do work on my skills. So I'm that good. Well,
Right.
guess what? The business world is highly dynamic and there's always people learning and evolving and coming up with new ways and efficient ways of doing things, right? And I have a saying in my book, if you're not humble, eventually you will get humbled. Happens to, to anyone that just gets too full of themselves. So that's an example. So it's a great model to really think about. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a professional in your career, and actually even it's the 5 elements of success, really. You can extrapolate it into all areas of life. And I think that is something that is big for people.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to get your book, especially for that page. I could just see that circle and, we have, with music, it's like the circle of fifths and all that stuff. But I really want to get that because I want to share that with all of our team members as well.
And I appreciate the music because I'm a musician, a rusty musician, but that's how I got my company started, was based on marrying a passion for music and a passion for technology. Actually, that's where it started. So just to give you a quick preview, that's what the diagram looks like. Yeah. So there's the Chinese version and then my version.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your tips and your tools. And like I said, I could sit here and speak shop with you all day long. But I think people are probably getting to the end of making dinner or their commute to work or their end of their workout. So before we leave, though, if you could give them one piece of advice to implement today that would change their life, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. There's so many things, right? But I would just say that importance of self-care. We talked about it already, but again, everything starts with yourself and you have to be right with yourself. And that is your entire being, mind, body, spirit, or your physical body, energy body, spirit body. You have to be right with yourself. So then you can create a world that's full of joy and fulfillment.
Oh, love it. Okay, before we go, tell everyone how they can get in contact you. Where can they buy your book? Talk to us about your website or where you live on social, because I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to connect with you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my website is csquaredpro.io. So that's the letter C and then squared spelled out, csquaredpro.io. And LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me as well. So just Craig Cooke, LinkedIn/Craig Cooke. I'm on Instagram, Craig Cooke, Twitter, Craig Cooke, TikTok, c2.777. So those are all great places to follow and connect with me. To get a hold of me the fastest would be filling out my form on my website or messaging me on LinkedIn. Or people can email me. It's pretty easy to figure out. Craig at csquaredpro.io. I just don't like to put it on my site, right? Because you get spam.
I love it. Okay, and your book is called Business Guru?
Business Kung Fu. Yeah, Business Kung Fu.
Business Kung Fu. That's right. Okay, that's right. Awesome. And so you guys can get the book as well. It seems like it's an amazing read. If you're looking to grow personally, professionally, Craig has just provided lots of great insight. If you think that you have a couple friends that could benefit from this podcast, we would love for you to send this to maybe 5 contacts, whether they're business leaders, owners, or they're middle managers, or they're wanting to work their way up within an organization. These are great tools and tips that you can use to move up that ladder. We're so grateful that you tuned in and listened to us today. As always, I'm going to ask you for a 5-star review. And thanks so much for tuning in. Craig, thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It was so much fun. Time went by so fast. So thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. We'll see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks for listening to the Stroke It podcast today. If you want to stroke me, please consider giving me a 5-star review, sharing this podcast with 5 of your favorite friends or someone you may think could benefit from the podcast, and consider joining my collective. It's completely free for the first 30 days, and you can go to jennysfreegift.com.